Hey, it's Justin Harvey. Thanks for tuning into the Anesthesia and Pain Management Success podcast. With APM Success, we take a close look at important topics pertaining to business, practice management, personal finance, and careers for anesthesiologists and pain management physicians. We work hard to take your critical questions straight to the experts. Thanks for listening. Welcome to another episode of APM Success. Very pleased to be joined here by Dr. Nirmala Abraham, who is a now friend of the show, coming back for a second conversation after 5 years. I didn't scare her away back in 2020 when we last conversed. Thank you for being here, Dr. Abraham.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Justin.
We were just lamenting before we hit record the challenges of the modern day parent, which I've got a couple little ones, and Dr. Abraham is Go ahead.
Yes, I was going to say, I am very happily the favorite aunt to many, but we are very proudly the no kids, no pets kind of home that can just throw the golf clubs into the back of the car and go whenever and wherever we want.
Yeah, and the conundrum of the athletics for the kids, and I was just saying, Oh my gosh, when we're chauffeuring full time, and that I guess is coming down the pike, and you were able to do a lot of things in your youth.
Yeah. And I feel like that has really contributed a lot to the person that I've been able to become, and especially the physician that I've been able to become. And I'll just warn you in advance, there is a massive thunderstorm coming through here right now. So if anything gets glitchy or particularly loud in the background, that it might just be the rain coming through. So just fair warning on that.
I miss those thunderstorms growing up in Pennsylvania. It's about that time of year when they start rolling in.
Oh yeah. It's coming. And it was bright sunshine and 80 degrees this afternoon. So, it changes that fast.
And then you get the thunderstorm, and then you get the 100% humidity immediately after.
Yes. It's fantastic. It is fantastic.
Well, I'm very pleased to be speaking with you today. I had asked you to just come back and talk about what you're seeing right now. Obviously, in the last few years, I have observed you're just continual leadership in the space and pain management, and you're a mentor to many, and you are just somebody who a lot of people respect and look up to. And so I'm excited to hear, what are you working on? What are you seeing? What kinds of wisdom do you want to impart to younger practitioners who want to model your success and the sort of diverse experiences you've achieved? So why don't you kind of tell us what you've been working on lately?
Yeah. So, just to kind of finish off the previous conversation that we had started, one of the opportunities that I was really grateful for growing up is the opportunity to be an athlete and be a musician and be a leader in the school systems and kind of in the community where I was growing up, because I felt like that gave me the exposure to a lot of different types of people. And it helped me understand how important it was to learn how to communicate with different kinds of people, because we are being faced with so many challenges in medicine right now. As physicians, learning how to communicate with health system leadership. How do we interact? How do we engage? And golf, as an example, everyone kind of jokingly talks about golf as this opportunity to network. And let me tell you, it is legit. It is absolutely the best way to get somebody off the grid for that solid 3 to 5 hours, depending on how long it takes you to play. And you really get to have conversations with people that you would never have in another setting. And so being a more whole person, so to speak, going into medicine, I think has really helped a lot. And even once you get into medicine, there's always still opportunities to develop that. And not just from the engaging with other people in your field and within the health systems and within industry, but even just to stay balanced for yourself. Medicine is so stressful right now. And there are so many things coming at us from so many different directions that if you don't have hobbies, if you don't have things that give you an opportunity to get away from medicine consistently, it's gonna suck you dry. And you got to have something to fall back on. I just got back from a medical conference in Scottsdale for women innovators in pain medicine. And it is an organization that I've become involved with more over the last few years. And they are doing some really fantastic things. And we met in Scottsdale this year, and Sedona happens to be one of our favorite places in the world. So we were already out there. So tacked on a week of vacation after the meeting. But leading into that meeting, I had just gotten back from playing a concert at Carnegie Hall with my orchestra from college. So I was in New York City the week before that. And, you know, it just kind of, I'm there, I come and work, I go to a meeting, I go on vacation. And oh, by the way, my healthcare system got hacked 2 weeks before I was supposed to do all of this.
I did hear about that.
Yes. So, fun fact, it is important to keep some of your information on paper. For as much as we have pushed away from paper, and electronic medical records is absolutely a godsend, and yet it can also be absolutely your downfall. Because if you don't know what you're clicking when you're making those 87 different clicks on your chart for each patient that you have to see, there's a very high probability that if that gets taken away from you, you will have no idea what to chart, no idea how to code, no idea how to bill. Some of us, however, are of an age that we started on paper. And I actually, because I'm partly sentimental, partly hoarder, I still had the handbook that I made for the fellows at UCLA 20 years ago that had paper copies of all of my dictation templates. So I was able to recreate those, update them, you know, add in a couple of different phrases that were required by the health system now that weren't 20 years ago. And was able to very quickly adapt, and just kind of was like, okay, fine. If we have to be on paper, I'm good. I can make that happen. And, you know, meanwhile, the 20 and 30 something year olds around us are having full on panic attacks, throwing temper tantrums like 3-year-olds, like they just do not know what to do with themselves.
I've got to imagine, if I put myself in your shoes, that pulling that binder off the shelf and giving it that
Yep.
blowing off the dust was a moment of satisfaction.
It was. It absolutely was. It's like, oh yeah, I got this.
Cool. So tell us about the conference in Sedona. What kinds of things are you guys talking about with the women innovators in pain management?
So what we are talking about is a lot of things, you know, just standard pain management topics, you know, the interventional stuff. They did a fantastic workshop to lead off the meeting, where there's a lot of hands-on time with some of the higher end procedures with the Intercept, which is the basivertebral nerve ablation, stimulators, pumps, things like that, which was really fantastic. We have some really amazing women doing good things all over the country with that. So they put together a really great workshop for that. And then we also talk about topics that are specific to women in medicine, not just pain management, but in particular with pain management, when you talk about the reproductive years, there are very significant concerns with fluoro exposure early in pregnancy. So a huge topic of discussion for pain medicine practitioners that are women is, when is the best time to have kids? Is it during residency before you even start your fellowship? Is it during fellowship? Is it a year into practice, 2 years into practice, 5 years into practice? Well, guess how old we are at that point? You don't want to wait that long, especially if, unfortunately, you end up facing issues with fertility. Mm-hmm. So, you know, so that was something that was discussed, and women that have experienced a whole range of circumstances regarding that had some really great insight to share with that. And one of the topics that I became connected to and was part of a panel discussion on was what to do for pain issues during perimenopause and menopause. And it's an area where very little data exists as to exactly how the hormonal changes affect pain conditions. And even less exists on what to do about that once you realize that is part of what's going on. And, you know, being one of the elder stateswomen of the field, um, a lot of the women have started referring to me as the OG because I kind of am at this point. Um, and looking at the way I see the world, sometimes I feel like I do have the luxury of being able to just speak my mind without fear. Um, Although I've always been that way, but particularly now, I feel like we have to stand up for ourselves and we have to be willing to speak up when there are areas that we feel like there is a significant lack of knowledge, a lack of information, and a lack of interest in seeking that information. And what I basically told this group was that, we need to come together to create that knowledge base, to create that information, and to create alternate ways in which we view this issue. Mm-hmm. Because big pharma is not going to come in and help fund research on how to best treat the hormonal fluctuations that we experience during perimenopause and menopause. They will spend billions of dollars on erectile dysfunction, but they're not going to spend the money on women because we're apparently only valuable during our reproductive years. And beyond that, good luck and God bless. So, we just had some really candid discussions about that. And, there's a lot of opportunities for where we can come together on that.
So for a project like the one you're describing and increasing, research in what represents a huge demographic chunk of people.
Yeah.
But perhaps there's, not like funding comes from different places. I understand in pain management, it's like 70% from industry. The remainder, at least historically, has been like NIH and government related funding. Yeah. As you think about a problem like this and a research gap like the one that exists, what do you think is the next step?
So I feel like the next step is going to be practitioners that decide that this is going to become their focus, and then kind of coming together. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be like a subset within the societies that will need to come together to make that happen. But one of the things that I'm looking at is connecting with other physicians that are like-minded and creating like a practice that will actually focus on these areas specifically, and starting to collect some of the data, starting to put together our own trials and our own data pools to help us start tracking this information, because there is so much variability from person to person. And there, in certain communities, like for here in Dayton, Ohio, the one place that we have is called the Happy Hormone Cottage. And, it sounds very quirky and just
like the kind of thing we'd have here in Portland.
Right. It sounds very granola, very Berkeley, kind of vibe to it. But it needs to be taken more seriously than that. When it's defined that way or pitched and marketed that way, I feel like it takes away from the science. It takes away from the reality of what a lot of women are actually suffering with when it comes to the pain that they're having during this time, and the other symptoms that they're having with the hot flashes and headaches and, all of these things. And that does take away from your quality of life. It does take away from your ability to spend time with your family and connect, just like any other pain condition does. And there are different ways to handle it. And so, I'm looking at getting licensed in acupuncture and seeing what type of alternative modalities might be helpful for this patient population. Because the other thing that I very openly told our attendees is that at 53 years old, I don't want to be wearing lead for another 10 or 15 years into my career. I don't want to be doing this in this way for that much longer. because I know my body just physically isn't going to like me very much if I did that. So I want to find other ways to get involved, stay involved in the field, and contribute in a way that adds to the scope and the breadth of, that we are able to offer our patients.
I'm curious to hear more about acupuncture. Uh, this is another thing here in Portland. It is a sort of there's a lot of
Yeah.
alternative therapies, um, a lot of chiropractors and acupuncture practitioners here.
Mhm.
How do you think about that therapy in particular, and what made you interested, and what does the path look like for you, and how do you sort of unify the ideas of the East and the West, if that is a distinction that applies here?
Yeah. Well, I think it applies a lot less than it used to. It definitely used to be something that was very much sort of this, voodoo kind of medicine that people felt like there wasn't a lot of science behind it. Except if you think about the fact that it's been around for thousands of years, there has to be something to it. Now, can you quantify it? Can you specifically drill it down to the exact molecules that are being affected by it? Probably not. And yet there is clearly benefit to be gained with a lot of alternative treatments. And, the ancient cultures have played that out clearly for many centuries. Um, and so I grew up having people in my family that were very much about herbal medicines and the natural remedies. And to this day, when I start getting a cold and I start getting sick, there is a powder that is a concoction of 5 or 6 different spices, black pepper and cumin and cardamom and all these other different things. Different people put in different things into their mix, but you take this powder, you put it in a teaspoon or a tablespoon full of honey, you mix it up, and you take that when you start feeling sick. And the ginger and the garlic and the pepper and all these things, the turmeric, these are all things that people are starting to recognize as being like the superfoods. And the all of the supplements say, oh, we have turmeric in ours, and we have this and that. And I kind of joke about it. I'm like, yeah, all you need to do is eat curry once a day and
Yeah.
you're fine. You'll have everything you need.
Yeah. Talk about
So
a superfood.
exactly, exactly. And, again, you look at the ancient cultures, guess what? There's a reason that these are the spices that they put into all of their food every single day. Every day. Not just as oh, by the way, I should take a capsule full of this because it's going to be good for this, that, and the other. Like, you put it all together and it works. So for me, acupuncture just made sense. It seemed like, well, yeah, let's figure out what this does. And my experience with acupuncture actually was during anesthesia residency. I had a really bad headache and I had an OR assignment. I couldn't get out of it. I had to sit in there and do my case. Well, 2 of our anesthesiologists at the University of Pennsylvania were licensed in acupuncture. And at the time, UCLA was the only place that was doing a physician level licensed course for acupuncture, which somehow, like a dummy, I did not make time to do during the 8.5 years that I was at UCLA. But anyway, one of them was working with me that day and he said, you know what? I'm going to go get my needles. He always carried his acupuncture needles. So he brought them over, and during a break, he popped a few of them in my ear. And he's like, okay, I'm going to leave them there, and you're just going to leave them there. And I just want you to spin them, every few minutes, just go ahead and spin them for me, and you'll be good. And I was like, okay, cool. So he did that, popped the needles in. I think he had like 3 or 4 of them in. And so there I was, and the surgeon looks over at me. He's like, what are you doing? Like, what is going on right now? I said, look, I was on the verge of getting a serious migraine headache going, and I didn't want you to have to cancel your case. So these are some acupuncture needles that are helping me with my headache. And he was like, okay, we'll carry on then.
When you put it in terms of RVUs, it all makes sense, doesn't it?
Right, it does. Exactly. It's all about the business. It's all about the workflow. Let's not interrupt the workflow. So yeah, it was amazing.
Huh.
And so I thought, wow, I need to get in on this at some point. And there's been other times in my career where I've looked at that as opportunities, but when I came here to Kettering 14 years ago, I was starting a multidisciplinary department for a health system. So I didn't have time to stop and do that then. And over time, as my practice has changed and I am now able to focus on other ways of delivering pain management to my community, we don't have any physicians doing acupuncture here anymore. There was one anesthesiologist that was doing it part-time, but he has since retired. And so again, this is a gap which I would gladly fill because I want to be able to transition my practice to other things that I can do.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have enough other colleagues in the community that are doing the other modalities, the other treatments. I want to figure out where will my value add come from in this field, in this community, as I get to the place that I don't want to be doing all of the heavy leaded fluoro-based cases as much.
Hmm. This is reminding me. There's this a line from Nassim Taleb, who is a writer. His background is in like math and stuff, but he has a couple like pop math, pop risk books, and he
Mm-hmm.
has this saying that the life expectancy of any good idea is equal to its age. And it's always stuck with me. And so when you think about something like acupuncture, I don't know how long it's been around, but
Thousands of years.
millenniums, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
millennia.
it's the kind of thing, just because it can't strictly be quantified in a peer-reviewed, double-blind, randomized controlled trial. If there's this observable effect and it's been around for a really long time because there's been some utility,
Yeah.
perhaps there may continue to be utility. And that's also a helpful when you think about like the new stuff.
Yeah.
Not that something can't outlive its life expectancy, because that obviously life expectancy is the average. But if it's been around for 18 months, this is true across any technology that we, not just
Right.
medicine, but it allows you to properly frame the thing that you're looking at. It's not
Exactly.
necessarily timeless wisdom. It's just it is what it is. So
It's observational science.
yes.
And I mean, even looking at the development of my career. So I started pain at a time that it was very much in its early stages. Board exams, all of that, it was just getting started in the mid late 90s. I finished my fellowship in 2003, and ultrasound wasn't a thing. We did not use ultrasound in our practice at all. It was zero part of the conversation. And we were doing procedures then, epidural lysis of adhesions, not a thing anymore. IDET, basically intradiscal ablation, not a thing anymore. So there were treatments that were being done at that time that we realized, does not play. No reason to keep doing it. So you move on from that. But then there's other things that we've learned along the way, like ultrasound has incredible value for a pain practice. I mean, phenomenal, because there are things that we are able to do now that we could have never imagined doing if we could only do fluoro guided, or for some CT guided. On the radiology side, people do some things that way still. But we've really been able to expand what we have to offer by adding some of these new techniques and new modalities that we now know will never go away because of what they have added to the field. So, I think what I've observed over the last 20 plus years is that we do need to keep looking forward to what we can do to grow and expand, and how we can fit how medicine is changing right now. And people are not well, unfortunately. And I wish I didn't have to even think this, much less say it out loud, but we do not have healthcare systems here in America. We have sick care systems. We're not helping people be healthier. We're basically waiting for them to get sick and then throwing a bunch of stuff at them to kind of patch things together and manage things.
Mm-hmm.
We're not fixing very much. And that's unfortunate because as a physician, I feel like my oath says, above all, do no harm. But with that comes also the do good. And to me, the good is helping people live their best lives, be as highly functional as possible. And that needs to incorporate healthy eating, movement, drinking more water, like just, being out in the sunshine, like just doing what is so basic to
Mm-hmm.
existence that we've lost because we're stuck on our devices, we're stuck on our screens, we're stuck with tech, and we get so engaged in that kind of data flow that we're not disconnecting enough and saying, no, I need to stop and go play with my kids. I need to stop and set up a dinner date with my best friend and just go enjoy a nice meal together with phones in the bags under the table, not disturbing us. My brother has done a fantastic job with my niece and nephew who are 11 and 9. Did not let them have screen time until they were in the 4 or 5-year-old range. They got very little screen time. We basically didn't watch TV when they were around, when they were little. And now they love playing board games with us when they come from Maryland to visit us here in Ohio. They want to play games. Wingspan is an awesome game that we have discovered that we love, and because we're bird geeks. And if I happen to pick up my phone because I see somebody has texted me, I will very quickly be reprimanded by my niece and nephew. Like,
Ooh,
excuse me,
love that.
we're playing games now. Can you please put your phone away?
I love that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Happy to oblige. But we're not connecting as humans
Yeah.
anymore. And that is causing emotional, physical pain
Yeah.
because we're just not doing what we need to do to take better care of ourselves anymore.
The time we met at the 2019 ASRA meeting, which
Yep.
seems like eons ago now, was
I know. Well,
before my
COVID happened since
yeah,
then. So
a lot.
like,
We've covered a lot of ground since then. So
yeah.
we talked about this a little bit earlier. I have observed in working closely with many physician families, as obviously you interact with a lot of doctors, my own sort of version of the same trends where medicine is becoming more and more of a pressure cooker, at least, in the specialties in particular of
Mm-hmm.
anesthesiology, and pain has its own sort of unique flavor of these challenges. But it is becoming, it's more and more requiring proactivity of the
Mm-hmm.
physicians to like really, in many cases it's just pushing against the grain, going
Yes.
against the flow. You've got to like carve out your own thing, your own life. You've got to create your own boundaries, and it's a countercultural thing that is required for you to sort of be able to have sanity and durability to
Yeah.
last, and to
Yeah.
not get burned out, to not have your marriage fall apart, to not like
Yeah.
become unhealthy. So
Yeah.
what have you been observing in this department?
So you are absolutely right about that. And that is another reason why I feel like, um, for me, because it would be very easy to disconnect from the societies and just kind of do my thing, because I'm not in a teaching institution anymore. And yet I have always loved to teach. That has been my thing. And I feel like the more I can pass on about what I know, whether it's to my patients on a day to day basis or to my colleagues, particularly the junior colleagues coming up behind me, the more I can educate them, the more impact my career is going to have.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I turned 50, that was definitely one of those times that I had to sit back and say, okay, what have I done with my life so far? What have I done with my career so far? And what do I want my legacy to be as a physician, as a human? Um, and a big part of that became the idea that I want to mentor the people coming up behind me, and I want them to know that they must care for themselves as much as they care for everybody else. Because if they don't, then they are not going to be their best selves for their patients or for their families and loved ones. And you must be very intentional about that. I've started doing a lecture series for the fellowship program in Iowa, where I'll do a talk for them in like late July, August, once they're done with boards and they can kind of settle into fellowship, talking about contracts and how do you assess and evaluate your job opportunities. Because, you know, a lot of the people that have heard me speak at meetings about contract negotiations and how you value yourself, on the academic side, they come up to me and they say, we don't know what to tell our kids. We've never left academics. We don't know what to tell them. They come and ask us these questions. So can you talk to our fellows? So I've started doing that. And the very first thing I tell them is find your joy. And it has to be outside of work. It will never, ever be work. That is ultimately what fulfills you in life. It can't be, because there is entirely too much that you have to put into the job that is not the altruistic service of medicine that we wanted it to be, for it to be all fulfilling. It's the relationships in your life that matter. It's the connections that you make with other humans that matter. So you need to find where your joy comes from outside of the workplace, and then you will be able to better deal with what happens in the workplace and make it a more joyful environment for yourself. Because we do get to choose that in the end, no matter how dire the circumstances are, we get to choose our joy. Our computer systems were hacked. We had no phones. We had no patient records. We had nothing. Our tech people were actually physically running from office to office through the physician office building, telling us what monitors had to be shut down. This has to be turned off. Don't do this. Don't do that. They had to physically go door to door to make that happen. And for me, I just looked at it like, okay, we're good. We can do this. We'll be fine. And everyone else is freaking out, and the sky is falling. We can't look. This is all good. We'll be fine. Let's just buckle down. Let's just figure out what we need to do, and just everybody take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. But the reason I was able to do that is because I had intentionally spent the time and energy over many years to recognize that the circumstances don't define me and my response. But that is intentional. It takes time, because trust me, there was a very significant amount of my career where I was way more reactive and let the circumstances control my emotions and control my responses and my behaviors. And I just don't want to be in that place anymore. And I don't think it's good for any of us as humans, period, to be in that place, but especially in medicine, and especially in pain medicine, because we are surrounded by people that are suffering every moment of every day in the workplace. So we have to figure out how to offset that.
Yeah. I had an opportunity today to get lunch with one of my clients and see their new clinic, which was really fun. They launched about a year ago, and we were walking through the waiting room, and it adjoins actually another clinic. And I had this, because I'm not a doctor, I don't have the patient experience, but I did have the thought walking through the waiting room and seeing some people there waiting, like, older folks who are they looked like they were sort of carrying a burden, and they were there to get better. And I was just thinking, man, like, I was just refreshed in my awareness of, this is really important work. These people are vulnerable. they have needs, they're dependent, and for you to show up and be able to have some empathy, some compassion, like that's
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense. Do you have a memory of a time, a moment, an experience where you were like, it was perhaps a catalyst for you to either double down or refocus on building the joy into, or like seeking the joy outside of your, like whatever that experience looked like for you? Anything that sticks in your mind as a time when you had to give that active
Well,
mental energy?
I think, it was, there's been various moments in my life. Again, because I grew up doing all the things, I have been very intentional about continuing to do all the things. Like with music, for example, that was a big deal for me growing up, but I have very specifically stayed connected to the orchestra that I played with in college. So I know I have an opportunity to be the musician and do that at least once or twice a year. So I very specifically will set aside time to practice and prepare for these concerts and do that. So I know I need to do that. Um, my grandmother had taught me how to knit and crochet when I was little. And I picked that up again about 15, 20 years ago. So now most of my friends and most of their kids all have blankets that I've made for them, or scarves or hats or something, because I do that with my downtime as a way to relax and unwind. Um, but I think in terms of within the clinical practice, and when medicine really made it clear to me that I had to be intentional about that, I think like everybody else was COVID, because that so quickly shifted our paradigm from drive, generate the revenue, create the volume. It's about the business. It's all about this, to, oh, wow, I might be dead tomorrow if I catch this. And I have luckily was not on that front line having to see the people in the emergency room, but a lot of my friends were. And I know that they were sleeping in their garage while the rest of their family was in the house, because they did not want to take it home and risk getting their family sick. Um, and looking at where pain fits as a specialty. Of course, we don't want people to suffer. And when we have ways to help them, we're going to do everything we can to make that happen. But the reality is, this is a specialty that only exists in very few countries. Most of the world is more worried about having clean drinking water and not have the kind of deadly infections that COVID became here. Mm-hmm. They have a lot of other things they're worrying about. Pain management is not on their radar at all. And we actually have had some women come to our WIPM conferences from other countries where they are trying to get the field going within their anesthesia departments and their rehab departments. But again, it's hard to get traction when you don't know if you're going to have running water, much less clean, drinkable water. Mm-hmm. So I feel like when COVID happened and we had to restructure how we were running our practices, how we set up the times for scheduling appointments, how we set up our workflows around that, I feel like that really aggressively reset for a lot of us how we are going to prioritize our careers with the rest of our lives. And, so there were a lot of things that I changed about how I've set up my schedule, how flexible I stay with my schedule. And it's interesting, people are always talking about access to care. That's a big catchphrase right now. And, for some health systems, that means they've set up multiple locations. It's like McDonald's. I mean, every few blocks, there's an urgent care or a primary care or something, just because people literally don't want to go more than like a mile and a half to get what they need. So there's that way of doing access to care. But to me, that dilutes it so much because there's only so many people you have to provide the care.
Yeah.
And especially as we look at physician shortages in a lot of specialties right now, that's going to become more and more of a problem. So when we start having conversations about access to care, and the administrators like to meet with us from time to time to say, what can we do for you? What do you need for support? And we just are asking all of our providers, how do you have things set up right now? If somebody needed to schedule an appointment with somebody in your office, when's the next available appointment? Tomorrow. And they look at me, they're like, no, 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 I don't think you understood the question. We're guessing, probably, anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. I said tomorrow. And they just looked at me like, what are you talking about tomorrow? I said, my schedule is set up in such a way that if I had a colleague that called me up and said, I have somebody that I need to have evaluated as quickly as possible, okay. If I can't fit them in later that day, I will make sure that we find a way to see them within the next 24 to 48 hours. And I have been very intentional about that my entire career because my mentor, Mike Ferrante, taught me that we have a unique opportunity in this field to make a difference for a lot of people and to support a lot of colleagues. And in order to do that well, we need to be available. And that means we stay open, we stay flexible, and we don't overload our schedules to the point that we are up to our eyeballs and cannot possibly fit in anything else. So clinically, flexibility, availability. Personally, flexibility, availability. It's the only way that we can survive in an environment that is trying to suck the life out of us right now.
Yes. And I would say one of the corollaries that I've interacted with, so there's obviously the clinical structure of your life. There's a necessary financial component that if you are out over your skis with your lifestyle and you have to make X
Yeah.
number of dollars, come hell or high water, it's going to impact all the other parts of your life negatively, and it's going to impact the durability of your career and the flexibility.
Yeah.
And if you need to do 47 patients a day or whatever,
Yeah.
then like leaving space for one of your colleagues who maybe wants to get like, you might not,
Yeah.
be able
And
to do
it's
that.
hard to do. It is
Yeah.
very difficult to do, especially when so many contracts now are productivity based and
Yep.
it's all about the RVUs, which is why this is happening.
Yeah.
Is when everybody's looking at, I have to see as many people as I can because that's the way that I'm going to make as much money as possible, because eventually I'll be able to stop doing that and enjoy it. But right now I have to crank as hard as I can, as fast as I can. And that's just what I'm going to have to do. Yeah, that sets you up for a pretty big crash at some point in time, because that is not sustainable without sacrificing something. And usually what gets sacrificed is your personal life, your marriage, your relationship with your kids, your friendships. And now, what I'm also starting to encounter a lot of is being in that sandwich generation.
Yep.
I don't have the kids to worry about, but all of my physician friends that are watching their kids launching, they're getting them off into the world and making sure they can survive in the wild. And then, oh, wait, my parents are now needing care. So just as you're getting rid of one, the other is happening. And again, to have the bandwidth to do that means at some point in time, you need to have prioritized yourself.
Yeah.
And so it is very challenging. But, like I said, I encourage every single fellow that I talk to, every single resident that is going into fellowship training, and even if they aren't, anybody coming into medicine that I have the opportunity to talk to, I very strongly encourage them to find a way to make sure they carve out their own personal time. And whatever that looks like for you, it's going to be different for every single one of us. Um, but we have to be intentional about that, because the pace that is expected of us is not sustainable if we don't have something to help us decompress. Um, it's just not going to happen. But it is tough, because when you're looking at, easily a $500,000 worth of debt, if you went to a private college and then medical school right out, like, that's easy.
Yeah.
And then what? You're starting your first job, kids, family, house, you want to enjoy your life, you want to go on vacations, but you're already carrying this extra mortgage with you everywhere you go. What do you do with that without grinding and, getting the dollars into the bank account immediately to be sent out to whoever is holding your loan right now?
Yes. Yes. That is the question. And the best advice I can give, especially if you're newer in practice and if you haven't yet, made all the big lifestyle expansions, like focusing in those first few years to build a solid foundation it's beneficial in so many ways, but I think the net impact just broadly is the stress reduction that comes from
Yes.
having margin
Yeah.
in your money, margin in your day, margin in your relationships. You can just breathe a little easier, and it
Yeah.
does give you gas
Breathing
in the
room
tank.
is critical. It
Yeah.
is just it, and it is, to me, that is non-negotiable. You
Yeah.
really have to do that. And of course, you talk to anybody about, financial success. Live within your means.
Yeah. Beneath them
Number
even.
one. Yeah, and below them. Because I mean,
Yeah.
we have, like, one of my life heroes is a good friend of ours that my boyfriend went to high school with. He got to retire when he was 42. He could have gone to MIT to do his engineering degree, but he decided, no, I'm going to stay in Maryland. I'm going to get in-state tuition. Maryland was a top 10 engineering school at the time, and still is. I mean, they're still one of the top engineering schools in the country. And he's like, so I'm going to get out of college with very little debt. He got a job at IBM and was basically living like a college student forever. Just put everything away. Literally, since like he started college, he was already putting everything away. And so now he's a math coach and tutor. And he and his wife have a great little house that they built in Asheville, North Carolina. And he got to do that because he lived very much under his means
Mm-hmm.
and set himself up to get out of school without debt. Now, that's about impossible for us to do in medicine. And he acknowledges that. He has a sister that is a physician, and we've had this conversation before. And I told him, I'm like, I didn't have that option. He said, yeah, but at least you were aggressive about paying down the debt. Like, you intentionally put energy into doing that.
Yeah.
Yes. Also didn't have kids. So I had that I didn't have to worry about. So, each layer that you add to what is going to take, then you do have to be that much more intentional about being careful in other areas.
Mm-hmm.
And that is also an area where I feel like there's opportunity for teaching in medicine, because we don't hear it. We don't hear that early enough. One of my MAs in the office today was talking about her daughter, who was just getting her first job at a swimming pool, working, as a lifeguard, and how excited she was to get her first paycheck. And I said, so have you set up her retirement account yet? And she just looked at me. She's like, what? I was like, look, let me tell you, I wish somebody had told me this when I was in high school. I may not have listened, but I wish somebody had told me that I needed to start saving back then, because I could probably be retiring like in a year or two now.
Yeah.
if I had done that then. But we used to bring in financial advisors when I was at UCLA. We actually had people come in and talk to our fellows about that. Just again, because medicine is not what it used to be. It used to be that you became a doctor and you stayed a doctor, and that was it. And you were just always the doctor. And the margin that you made and the kind of wealth that you were able to put away was substantial. And you didn't really have to worry about, am I going to have enough later on down the line? And you also didn't have to give up a lot because the margin that you had and the differential on your income was significant. It isn't what it used to be anymore. And when you are looking at quality of life and what that costs financially now, you have to be much more intentional about that as well, because then that will start causing a lot of emotional and psychological pain.
Yeah.
Couldn't
have said it better myself. That's a perfect place for us to put a bow on it. Dr. Abraham, thank you very much for joining, for lending your perspective and expertise to the APM community. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Absolutely. Happy to do this, and I look forward to our next chat.
Yes, likewise.
If you liked what you heard this week, head on over to apmsuccess.com, where you can find more content and free resources to help you build a successful career in anesthesia and pain management. If you wanted to leave a review in iTunes, I'd also really appreciate it. Thanks for using some of your valuable time to join me today on APM Success.